We started laying out this foundation by setting one corner, and then we were able to pull diagonals along with a straight measurement with long tapes to get all the other corners. Once we had all of the corners square and pinned, we pulled some reference locations, and instead of using batter boards in this case, we just used some 2x4 stobs with a T25 deck screw in the top. This is a really flat site and not a complicated foundation, so this was a great way to save a little time. Also, the track hoe can run right over these things when he's digging without tearing them up like a batter board.
Oh, got your fingers.
If you're wondering how I figured out how deep to dig, I simply went 12 inches down from the lowest point on this whole area. 12 inches down is the code here for frost line. Here's a look from the top of the hill. Chris actually adjusted the grading so water would flow to the back of the site and then off to the left. You don't want it running off the front because it'll erode the fill.
Huh? Missed this.
Call the concrete plant, see if they can radio in. If you look closely, Chris is guarding our reference pin so it doesn't get knocked over. We really need that later. For these footings, we're using a 3000 PSI concrete, and right here he's rolling a little more water into the drum to get it to a 5 slump. Once we had all the concrete placed, we took a hand float and put a nice smooth finish on these footings so that we could snap lines and get our block laid really easily on the first row. If you've ever seen a block job, this is the first step. Spread some block out. We set these about 16 inches apart because that's how much space they take up on the ground. Our mix ratio is 2 5-gallon buckets of sand mixed with 1/2 of an 80-pound bag of an S-type mortar. First batch of mud was getting near ready, but there's still one more step we always do, and that's to recheck each corner of the footing to make sure that it's actually all the same height at each corner. In this case, there was only about a 1/4 inch variance on all the corners, but that's enough to make a difference. We basically will make up the difference in our mud joints on the block so that at the top of the block, the foundation is completely level, even if the footing is off by just a fraction as it was. And finally, by about 10 o'clock, we were actually laying some corners. You can see here that I'm laying down the mud for the first block. We have it oriented in a specific direction so that it'll work out without having to cut a block anywhere in the row. As you can see, I'm laying one row of regular 8-inch block, and on top of that, I'm laying this special block called a header block. And you can see that the edge is cut off on one side. That's going to allow the concrete to flow in from the slab all the way down through both layers of block and lock them all together. That's why we don't need the steel sticking out of the footing. All this is going to be tied together by the slab in the end. Now, we could have done this a totally different way, called a monolithic pour, where we pour the slab and the footings in one pour.
Getting old sucks, bub.
Oh yeah. Here it is, a finished foundation ready for plumbing, gravel, and then a slab. This thing sticks about 10 inches to 12 inches out of the ground so that we can slope the ground up to it later. That's very important. Now that we have the foundation complete, our next step is to get the slab plumbing in to get ready for the slab. This plumbing will be underneath the slab. These string lines represent the outside of the walls. We use these to make sure the pipes come up in the right place in our slab. Aaron knows what he's doing. Let's let him go.
Here, put a 3-inch Y. Catch the upstairs stack, 3x2 combo on its back. Catch the washing machine. 3-inch Y is going to catch the toilet. Go just past it, 3x2 combo to go catch the tub, pushing down to 2 inch out of the end of it, go straight ahead. 2 inch is going to catch the shower, and then sweep up right at the end of it with a 2 inch. That'll be your vent and lavatory.
And like all great plumbers, Aaron starts with the main part of the sewer line, the lowest part, and work. As the plumbers were working, Jason and I started getting ready to form the slabs for the outdoor patios. I was determined to use all of our scrap lumber from the last job, but as you'll see in a minute, that didn't work out. And here's a look at one of the slabs formed up. These outdoor slabs are sloped about an 1/8 inch per foot in one direction so the water runs off, and we use these kicker boards to support our stakes so that the form board doesn't get pushed out by the concrete. This is the patio facing the view here, and I want to show you how we were doing our slope of 1/8 inch per foot, simply using a laser line, checking one end and checking the other, adding up the 1/8 of inches, making sure it's 1/8 inch per foot drop. And after this soaking, we decided to call it a day, as well as the plumbers. You can tell they didn't finish either. And this is a look from my perch up on the hill. I'll do a lot of shots from up here because it's a great view. We were back the next morning with the plumbers to finish up our slabs and get the plumbing ready for inspection. Right here, they're airing up to test the lines with pressure, and this is a really important step you have to do by code, and there is a reason, and we'll find out in just a second. He started going, shh, everybody quiet, everybody quiet. And guess what?
That's correct.
But within a few minutes, they had this section cut out and replaced, good as new. We were ready for inspection. And pictured here from left to right is the toilet drain, a washer drain, and then a stack that will catch all the plumbing from the upstairs. And since we were finally getting a break in the rain, I decided it was time to go ahead and dig in the turndowns for these outdoor patio slabs. And I dug into a few things, including a giant rock that I couldn't even move myself. Looks better, we got some gravel. And a couple of days later, once it was dry enough to actually get a dump truck in here, we got some gravel. Washed 57 stone for under the slab and road bond gravel for on the driveway, 2 different kinds. Here's a look at this crazy loop system for the supply lines that runs up out of the slab under the stairwell. And once again, we set up the laser. What we're gonna do here is check that the gravel is perfectly level, 1, and number 2, that it's perfectly 4 inches below the top of our forms, which is the block in this case. That way the slab is perfectly 4 inches thick everywhere. We take away gravel where it's too high and we add gravel where it's too low until everything is perfectly level. Next, it was time to check the gravel under the outdoor patios, and since these are sloped, we use a string line to check the level of the gravel. We set the string line on the same slope as the top of the forms, checking that we have 4 inches clear. Okay. Yo, that's my tool belt.
Not anymore, bub. There's a new boss in town. His name's Jason Ellis.
Yeah, good luck with that.
This is what it looks like in regular speed. Sucky.
Definitely one way to do it.
Next, in preparation for the slab, we laid out our 6 mil vapor barrier. 6 mil means 6/1000ths of an inch, not 6 millimeters. That would be way thicker. And we had to get this overlapping by a couple feet before laying the steel on it. The steel is to reinforce the concrete slab. I do want to point out that we don't have any thickened areas in the slab for load-bearing points because of the trusses that are going to span wall to wall on this structure. In many cases, we have to do specialized load-bearing points. We tied all of this steel on a 2-foot grid with these little ties and our whirligigs, as I like to call them. Once we had all the steel in and tied, we elevated the steel with these rebar chairs so that it will be in the top third of the slab and it will give it more strength that way. Here's a quick look at this vapor barrier already working. You can see it trapping the moisture underneath the gravel.
What time is it, guys?
It's beer 30. There ain't no such thing as beer 30. So, you know, we're all human. We all make mistakes. We forget things. You know, I told them it's no big deal. I mean, most guys will forget maybe their tape measure or maybe forget some lumber. But no, not our Perkins boy. He forgot to do the whole entire shower.
First, we removed 3 inches of gravel so that the curbless shower could recess in below the rest of the slab. We installed the stakes and pulled the form board up flush with the top of the rest of the slab. And then we played a little bit of construction twister to get the other side fastened level. And last, we drilled through the block with a masonry bit to run a few screws into the end of these form boards. After cutting all of the stakes flush, I then bent some steel that would tie the steel from the rest of the slab into this new lower portion of the slab under the shower. That way it's all one solid piece. Today we used a concrete pumper to place the concrete because you can place it a lot more accurately than dumping it straight out of the truck onto the ground. This pumper is controlled by a remote control. It's awesome. And we had the best guys on the job, Terry Fisher and his crew, and Allison Concrete Pumping. Here's our first section, which is about 10 feet wide. The usual range is 8 to 12 feet from my experience. This gives you a width that a nice straight screed board can actually reach across. In this shot, Terry is hand screeding because of all the pipes. He's screeding between two of the grade poles that I showed in the first part of the video. These poles are taken out of the concrete before it dries, and the little indentions are just filled in.
You make it up here? Oh.
This is the first of several passes with this power trowel to slick this slab out. It's done at low speed with the blades at a shallow angle. And here's a look at the patio finish. It's got the broom finish, as I mentioned. It's literally finished with a broom, just like he's doing. And this isn't as easy as it looks, though. He's really good at it, and that's why I hired him to do it instead of me doing it. As they were finishing these patios, something caught my eye. It seemed someone had run over our form board between us putting it in and pouring the concrete. It was way crooked. Luckily, we were able to use my truck and some ratchet straps to pull the form board back straight. Then we used some excess concrete to fill in the void like it never happened. As the day went by, the concrete cured and got harder. Terry was able to get out and turn the power trowel up to get a nice slick finish. He uses these water bottles with a tiny hole cut in the lid to add water where he needs, and this is really a several-hour process going back and forth between the power trowel and using a hand trowel around the edges to get everything smoothed up just right. With this slab completed and dried, it was time to turn it over to quality control, which in this case is my son and a ripstick. Let's see how it does.
Ready to go.
This is our first floor walls, but before we get building, let's check out a surprise guest that came by. My dad.
What's up?
Those toenails missed there. There's two right there.
Oh, thanks, Dad. Thanks for coming out today. Jeez.
Welcome to my childhood.
Our first step today was to lay down this foam sill sealer. It fills any small gaps that might be between the bottom plate and the concrete slab. These are the bottom plates made out of pressure-treated wood. We lay them next to the bolts and mark out the bolt locations, then we can drill them out with a bit. Even though it's tempting to drill these holes way oversized to make the plate go on easily, that's not a good idea because the washer won't catch as well. After crowning a few studs to see which way they were bowed, we laid out the top plate based on our bottom plate marks, and it was actually time to frame a wall. Let's do it. On this wall, we're using 93-inch studs to make an 8-foot tall wall, and we're using 2 nail guns on this wall. We'll show you why.
All right, we're nailing our first wall together. The bottom plate is pressure treated, all right? So we're using these galvanized nails on the bottom plate because the corrosiveness of the treatment of the pressure treated wood will rust a standard non-galvanized nail. We're using standard non-galvanized nails everywhere else. Bottom plate.
That's a standard.
There you go. These are called brights.
Like most framers, we use one-letter abbreviations for all the parts of the wall, and if we need to move something, we go over it in magic markers. Once we had framed some window openings with king studs and jack studs, it was time to lay out the sill plate. A great way to save time while doing this is to actually lay it against the bottom plate and just trace the layout.
It's like the carnival.
Keep this here in a moment, so I don't want to give away the sheet.
Jono! Yo, one jack off.
What?
I need one more jack.
On this wall, we're just putting out full sheets of OSB and then coming back and cutting out the window openings with a Sawzall. This is a pretty easy way to do it. We also have a heavy-duty router with a flush cut bit that we use pretty often to do the same thing. For the openings on load-bearing walls, we're using these box headers. We're making them go all the way to the top plate so that we don't have to put tiny cripples in. It takes a lot of time, and sometimes you can't get them as tight. This is the kitchen wall at the back side of the house. The rafters will angle up from here to the front wall of the house, making it about 56 inches higher than this back wall.
Yeah, that's definitely one way to do it.
We nail this type of sheathing on an 8-inch nail spacing, and we make sure not to shoot the nails too deep so they actually hold.
Ooh.
Watch out for that board.
That's definitely one way to do it.
This is the end wall by the master bedroom, and you can see we left a little bit of the top plate off so it would fit in easily.
Going. Hey, boys.
Yeah.
We got a couple shiners up here.
That's one way to do it.
New guys.
Okay, it's time. We gotta do the big wall, the big window wall. I've been thinking about this wall for weeks. every night when I wake up. It's the wall. Now it's finally time. Got to do it. We got to do it right the first shot. We got this.
It's just a wall.
Okay, so what we got to do, because we got some plumbing in the way where this wall is, we got to put our first stud on the end. It's really tall, 13 feet tall. Then we got to shift our bottom plate over to where we can keep the wall squared up without being on top of the plumbing. Then we got these big built up pieces of sort of like a beam here, but that's the main structure for the wall. We got 2 giant king studs followed by 2 jacks on either side. We got to start in the middle. You got to put the 2 studs in first, side nail those together, then add 1 jack on each side at a time and nail those on, then add the second. If you put them all in the way at the same time, you'll never get it nailed together. I mean, everybody knows that.
I'm lifting, boys.
Oh, do I have the option?
Time for the big lift of the big wall, and this thing was heavy. It's about 13 feet tall and has these giant headers at the top. We were standing it up on blocks so that we could get it up over the anchor bolts and wouldn't have to lift it vertically to get it in position. That was crucial.
That was fun.
You weren't scared at all?
No, come on, no. I'm scared of nothing, bub.
On this project, we're using Hydro Gap house wrap. It has these rubber nodules that leave a 1mm gap between the siding and your house. This helps to eliminate moisture as well as being able to drain up to 100 times more bulk water than your standard house wrap. Meanwhile, Arlo and I were framing up the gable end wall, which matches the roof pitch of 312 across the top. That means that each stud is a different length. We figured this length by using math. At 312 roof pitch with a 16-inch spacing makes each stud 4 inches longer than the previous one.
Whoa, in a little, out a little, whoa. Try 1 screw there. All right, now let it loose. Okay. I think go ahead and do the other one.
Real man of genius stuff right there, bub.
Once we had all of the exterior walls framed on this house, it was off to the races building the interior walls.
All right, here we go. In the room.
And you know, I think
Fire in the hole!
These interior walls don't need anchor bolts like the exterior walls because there's no uplift. We use a powder actuated nail gun, and just like our first concrete delivery, our truss truck drove right past our job site and was gone for about a half an hour before he finally came back around and found us. Yep. These delivery trucks are pretty cool. They have a set of rollers that can be moved up or down to roll the load off the back of the truck. I was super happy to see these floor trusses, but after closer inspection of the drawings, something was crazy. This is not what I expected. Turns out they had turned the trusses the opposite way than I had planned to. He ran these trusses to a wall that I was not planning on being load bearing. We had to call a structural engineer and run the loads for our slab to make sure it would carry the load before carrying on. Luckily it did. Teamwork. Okay.
Right, 66-year-old man. This is a tough one.
Where the heck does that go? Once the trusses were installed, it was straight on to applying the Advantech subfloor for the loft. We're using a quick drive drill here, and this makes it a lot faster and easier, and way easier on your back. We of course also are gluing the subfloor down, and actually we usually use the Advantech brand subfloor glue, but our gun messed up, so we had to resort to the old subfloor adhesive. We used the simple technique of a sledgehammer and a block of wood to beat the tongue and groove tight on this Advantech sheeting and then screw it down. It's a pretty fast process on a floor this size.
That's new. There wasn't like that before.
How the heck did you grow a beard like that?
You just gotta quit shaving.
I quit shaving.
Oh, wow. That's like, he's got you crushed 6 inches. After lunch, Jono and Arlo were straight into stairs, and this is pretty amazing to be building the stairs the same day we built the floor. This doesn't happen every time. Since this is one straight run of stairs, we decided to screw the tops and the bottoms of the stringers together and make like a bridge, install the thing all in one piece. We also installed a board against the wall to space them off the wall 1.5 inches. This gives room for a drywall and a finished skirt board to slide in behind the stair nosings so you don't have to cut around them with finished material. We made these stairs 44 inches wide, even though it's a small house, because I don't like narrow stairs. It's like a super highway from the top to the bottom. Next on the list was setting these posts and girders to carry the roof system out over the covered patio. We're using 5/8 inch anchor bolts that go down into this concrete slab to hold the post down against any uplift. This particular type of bolt uses a pin to spread the bottom of the bolt and wedge it tightly into the concrete to where it can't pull out. After using a laser and a tape measure to figure the heights of the posts, I took the 8x8 posts and cut a notch in the top that would receive the beam. A little extra step here for aesthetics, run a hand plane down each corner to knock the corner off, make it look nice and round and smooth.
Who sharpened that?
It wasn't me. This 8x8 post is way oversized for the load. I just wanted it to be big so it didn't look like a toothpick underneath this huge roof. Once the base of the post was fastened into the bracket, we used some 2x4 bracing to brace it plumb in both directions. Next, it was time for the even taller post on the high side of the roof. This took a few more men as it was a several 100-pound post.
Come in a little bit. A little more. A little more. Whoa. Yeah. Okay, that's good.
After our posts were set, we simply made notches in the wall to carry the load of the other end of the beam. This is an easy way to do it. Then we attached the beam to the post with these structural screws.
Dang!
Man, how'd that feel, bud?
Oh, wow. That hurt my wrist just watching.
Dude, they give me an impact.
You know what they say? That was one way to do it.
How's she look?
Dead nuts?
Dead nuts.
After the first layer of the beam, we added the second layer to make a total width of 3.5 inches with this LVL beam to carry the roof load across this opening. With the posts and girders finished up, we still had daylight to burn, so we started working on some of the upstairs walls on the loft. This was another big wall, and I hated to miss out on lifting it, but someone's got to videotape this stuff so you can watch it. The reason the bottom plate of this wall wasn't sliding off the subfloor as they lifted it is Jamie had tacked it to the floor just like this with toenails. This acts as a hinge. You can stand the wall safely. Here's our roof trusses getting delivered, and here's one reason you should stand way back when trucks are dumping material on your job site. It never fails, man. First truss, frickin' rainstorm. But as it often does in this area of the world, 5 minutes after this huge rainstorm, it's bright and sunny, so we got after these trusses. These are set 24-inch on center, and they're 24 inches deep with webbing that connects the bottom cord to the top cord. The top cord is a 2x6 with 30-inch overhangs that will shade the windows in the summer, and the space between the top and bottom cords will be a great area to run our ductwork for this house.
We had to do the lower floor of trusses in the hot sun the other day. It's nice and cool right now and cloudy, so we're gonna try to hit these ones on the upper floor right now.
And if you didn't guess it, cool and cloudy is just another way to say it's getting ready to rain again, of course. Luckily, that gave us a good reason to come off the roof and meet with our heat and air man, Steve Sampson. We always like to walk through the job to figure out exactly how everything's going to work.
We'll come out of here, we'll come up here with the dryer like this. Yeah. With the dryer vent, cut the plate.
Get the Ric Flair.
Woo!
You can see from this angle that the front edge of the truss is actually an extension of the front face of the wall, so it was crucial to get that alignment perfect so that our sheathing could run straight up the wall and onto the trusses. All right, it's 10, 12 in the morning. Let me show you how humid it is. Look at Harlow.
It's sweat time.
Did you jump in a pool?
I got it 11, 2x6, 55 3/4.
45 3/4.
Exactly. 55 3/4 coming up.
He'll figure it out once they're all wrong.
7 of those?
Yeah.
11.
11, I got you.
So those boards he was trying to cut, these are them. They are the outriggers for our overhang on this side of the roof. They stick out about 2 feet on the sides, and you can see the blocking between each one. The outriggers butt into the second to the last truss and right over the top of the end truss, which is called a drop truss. And that's the reason it's dropped exactly 5.5 inches, is so that you can run these outriggers over the top of it to make a strong extension for your roof overhang. And again, rain, more rain.
Yeah, Jason got here at 9:05 because he thought it was 8:05.
Look at my phone. It's an hour off.
Okay. Thank Verizon for a little sleep in there.
It's a pretty good excuse, I think.
This is one of the biggest days on a job, the day it actually gets dried in, like it has a roof, and you can stand in there and not get wet. We started by doing all of the fascia boards, and these are 2x6. These are what we call the sub fascia. There'll be a finished fascia that goes over top of this in the finish. And no day is complete without a little fun, so I decided to turn the exhaust on this nail gun straight up. How'd that feel, Arlo?
Oh, great, man. It was really cooling.
In this case, we had one truss that was high for some reason, so we had to fix it. A simple skill saw and a chalk line took care of the 1/4 inch that this one was sticking up so that the roof would be nice and flat.
Wow, this one actually is in line.
The center one on this other one was pretty.
It doesn't go across the board. This is kind of sad. We live in a day of great technology and advances in machinery, but listen, the lines on your plywood, they're never actually on 16 or 24 inch centers. I don't know why that is. The best thing you could do for yourself is to use your square, draw your lines at 2-foot centers, and actually mark them yourself, because if you base anything off of those factory lines, it will be way off.
Are they supposed to hit the rafter, or does it matter?
It's no big deal either way.
Yeah, that's one way to do it.
As you can see, we build this little stand to where the ground man can lean a board up to where the roof man can grab it without the ground man having to stand there and just hold it. This works great and really speeds things up. In this case, we're using 5/8 inch OSB. The code in our area only requires 1/2 inch sheeting on the roof, but I don't like the way it feels on 24 inch spacing. The 5/8 feels a lot stiffer. We're using 2.5 inch ring shank nails on a 6 inch spacing to nail this sheeting down to the top of these trusses.
You know, it's hard to find satisfaction these days, but I'll tell you what makes me satisfied. Taking a nice sharp hand plane to a nice soft piece of spruce. Hey, if you're a woodworker and that doesn't make you happy, I don't know what will.
In case you're wondering what Jamie was doing, he was just knocking off the very corner of this fascia board so that it would line up with the top of the rafters perfectly. And there you have it, one closed in section. Looks pretty nice. As many of you know, it's not a good idea to leave OSB or plywood sitting out in the rain because it swells up or goes crazy. So we always try to get the roofing underlayment on the same day. On this house, we're using an underlayment product called titanium paper. And it's quite a bit more expensive than regular roofing felt, but it does have a great walking surface that's grippy, and I think it's a small price to pay for safety and a little bit tougher of an underlayment. We did leave it hanging off the edges just a little to cover our finished fascia boards when we put them on later.
Heads up.
Reaper 77/8 short point on the 312.
Why is he always yelling? Man, he's too loud.
Yo, I need a full sheet today. Let's go. Come on.
All day long. This is what we have to put up with. It's crazy.
4-footer.
Whoa, we got a shiner here. New guy.
6-footer.
You ain't right.
Miss. Miss.
Not really shown in this video is the amount of time we spent straightening the fascia boards like Jamie's doing, making sure that they're straight and not crooked. And with one more sheet, this upper roof was ready for underlayment as well. And both of these were done in the same day, by the way. It wasn't a bad day because it's not a huge house, even though it was hot. This house will get a metal roof, and that's why we're not doing drip edge right now. This whole surface will be spaced up with yellow pine strips that the screws on the metal roof will screw into. Here's where we left you last week. We had just finished the roof system, the upper and the lower parts, but we have one little section to go. That's going to be today. But first, we have to connect those upper and lower roof sections that we finished last week. So what we're doing here is building a section of exterior wall that's kind of floating. It just floats between the upper and lower roof trusses, and I have to cut each stud on a bevel to match the roof pitch. The saw doesn't have roof pitch on it, so at first I have to figure out the actual angle of the roof pitch, which turned out to be 13.5 degrees. To mark the layout for these studs, I simply hooked on the outside edge of the framing and pulled horizontally with my tape. I measured each stud individually, even though they should be the same. Then we added this blocking to make sure that the OSB had a solid backing along the bottom edge. We installed the OSB on an angle just to save a little material. To finish this wall off, we wrapped it in our drainable house wrap and then lapped that over the underlayment for the roof and sealed it with some flashing tape. The last bit of roof we had to build on this house would cover the master bath area and also this little seating area for the owner's Zen garden.
Wow.
Now the rest of this roof structure was built a little differently. We actually installed the ceiling joists first and then a fascia board on the end of those. These rafters will actually land right on top of the ceiling joists, giving us sort of a homemade energy truss. The energy truss gives you more insulation depth against the outside wall, and that's the real beauty of it. It also gives you a higher fascia so it doesn't get down into your windows. Good? A little more. That's it. Next, we got going with our first bit of finish material on this house. Our plan is to install this stone from 24 inches down to the ground on the structure and cap it off with a nice water table rock. First, we installed this Mortair rain screen on the areas where the stone would go. This gives a spacing of an extra 1/8 inch or 3 millimeters behind the stone for drainage. Well, and here's the reason I volunteered to do stonework. It kind of installs like a piece of wood. You shoot it with a stainless steel finish nail, and the nails just sort of disappear. Oh, wow.
Chris strikes again. No tree in the forest is safe.
Once I had this first section mostly done, it was time for some of the more intricate cuts around the door openings. And again, this was a really easy product to work with. I simply marked on the back with a magic marker, then used an oscillating tool to cut through the stuff. And it cuts kind of like really soft wood, like balsa wood. So this was a snap, and I found this to be the best way to cut this material for any kind of detail. The lower 3 rows of stonework would be going against masonry, so we couldn't shoot it on with a gun, so we're going to glue it. The adhesive is installed in vertical lines to maintain the drainage plane behind the stone. Once we got in a groove laying this stone, it was super fast. In fact, we did the whole house in one day. Jamie went around with the top 4 rows, and we also figured out how to make our own mitered corners really fast and easy with a chop saw.
Next, we were on to the half wall that would separate the loft from the stairwell and also give it some privacy from the rest of the house if you want to sleep up there. Since this wall doesn't connect to the ceiling, it needs extra reinforcement so that it'll be sturdy. To achieve this, we lap these studs down the side of each truss.
Yep, hit it. All right, hold up.
Oh, I hit the plate.
All right, can you shoot it for real this time without screwing up?
All right, you ready?
Yep. Bottom. Done. Okay, level. It's so strong.
All right, give it a shake.
Dude, this wall don't give a shake. I'm serious.
And this is the last little wall in the house, I think, just enclosing the underside of the stairs where the washer and dryer will be housed. The homeowner, Tina, also paid a visit to the job site this week, and she was super happy, which makes us super happy. In the end, this is her home, and we want it to be just like she wants it.
So Ray and I were talking, it's a little bit warm to be working today.
Yeah.
Seriously, I should not be sweating like this doing construction. This is ridiculous.
Yeah. You're disgusting right now.
Alrighty, I'm out of here. Get your truck out of the way, Perkins!
To start the process of installing these finished fascia boards over the sub fascia boards, we install a block on the roof surface. This gives us a positive stop to bump the fascia board up to. After the board is installed, we remove these blocks and then patch the screw hole with some flashing tape. We've used a lot of different materials for a finished fascia, including cedar or just wrapping the sub fascia with pre-painted aluminum, but in this case we're using a 2x8 pressure treated board as the finished fascia, and we're using kiln dried treated. That way it doesn't shrink and we can actually paint or stain it right away.
To go in the paint store. Once I sneezed in it, I'm like, what do I do now?
To get down, dude.
No, man, I got a couple more screws.
Every time.
What's your name?
Jason.
Jason.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, I had a guy. His name was. Oh, are you that guy? Dude, you've been gone for like so long. I forgot you even worked here.
Look who's back.
Hey, Bob, what's going on?
Looking pretty tan.
Yeah, a little bit.
I thought you said your arm was in a cast.
It was this kind of cast.
Next, it was time to finish closing in this structure with the windows that we had ordered from Jennings Builder Supply. First, each window opening is prepped for the windows. This includes, for our method, cutting the house wrap back 1 inch from the sides of the opening to apply caulk directly to the OSB, and also cutting a flap at the top that will lap down over our window flashing. First, the pan flashing is installed over the sill of the window. It then wraps down over the face of the wall and adds an extra layer of protection to this flat surface.
We've had failures and got back on itself.
Make sure it's in the video.
After patching this in with a new piece of tape, I was able to roll the entire surface and then stretch this corner around to make a nice tight seal. Next, we applied a bead of caulk that will seal the window flange to the wall on this new construction type window.
Yeah, I did. All right, bottom. Good? Yep.
As Ray and I install the window from the outside, Arlo is on the inside to center the window up in the opening. He's also spacing the window up off of the window sill with spacers. In this case, we're using speed squares, and this is pretty common practice to not have the window actually sit tight to the window sill. Last, we use flashing tape on the sides and top, and we're using the drainage method here, so we don't actually flash tape the bottom.
Where does this thing go? I don't even know.
You all right there?
Dude, help me out.
Yo, let's put that window in the wall.
All right, I'll let you get one over here, Ray.
Here's the set of 3 windows that are in the upstairs loft. Those are next, and this is an amazing view up here since that tree has been cut. And that was a wrap on the windows. This process took 1 whole day. Next, it was time to prep the material for the soffits, which is the underside of the overhangs. On this house, we're using rough sawn 3/8 plywood, and we've used a lot of different materials here on different houses, including aluminum and hardy board. We stained all of this material with a solid color stain, which kind of looks like paint, but actually it's a stain, so it soaks into the material instead of drying on the surface. We were able to use it through a sprayer because it's thicker than regular stain, almost like a paint. We coated this soffit material 3 times on the ground so we wouldn't have to get up on a ladder later and do it upside down.
Dude, I am never helping Perkins paint again.
Why? What's the matter?
Oh, hey, what's up?
Wow.
Yeah, thanks, bub. You know what they say? That's one way to do it.
This 2-inch wide metal louver vent is installed on the eave side and on the upper side of the roof to let air vent above the insulation to keep the roof deck cooler. We installed this soffit material using 18 gauge 7/32 narrow crown 1.25" electro galvanized staples in this boss stitch nailer, and these things have amazing holding power for lots of different applications. In case you were wondering, this project of prepping the soffit material and installing it took 1 day with a crew size of 3 men. The next morning we went around and did our solid color stain on all of the fascia boards, which again were pressure treated but kiln dried, which is important because kiln dried wood will accept stain, whereas non-kiln dried pressure treated wood is wet and it won't stain very well. Since the windows and doors are installed, it's time to start putting up corner boards and window trims so we can side this house. We're going to be using this rough sawn wood as our window and door trim. This is a 12-inch wide board. We will be ripping it down to 3.5 inches for most of the trim, but also different widths for other trim. To give these ripped boards a more finished look, we're knocking the sharp edge caused by the table saw off with a hand plane. And Jamie says this is one of his favorite and most satisfying things to do in the world. We bought these trim boards thinking that they were a full inch thick, but they weren't. They only measured about 7/8, which was thinner than the overlapping part of our lap siding, which is a problem. So to fix this, we decided to do an 1.25" banding around the outside of all of our trims on the house. That would stick out more than the thickest part of our siding. Once the boards were ripped, we put a heavy coat of solid color stain on all 4 sides, and Jamie uses this dunk technique with a whiz roller to get it on there thick the first shot, and this makes a great base coat. I like it.
Woo! How many are we going for here?
All of them. Before we could install any corner boards or siding, we had to install this flashing that goes over top of the stonework. And this isn't something you can buy at the store, so we make it at the shop on our metal brake. This drip cap flashing is installed behind the house wrap, just in case any water got behind the siding on the house wrap, it would come out over this flashing. And we also cut it back a bit so that you see the flashing instead of the house wrap below that bottom row of siding. So you're telling me you legit do not wear sunscreen or do not believe in sunscreen?
Nope. I mean, we've survived thousands of years without this stuff. Why do we need it now?
Let's try just a little spot here. Okay. Start slowly.
Oh, look at it already. Dude, there's something up with the sunscreen. Look how I'm sweating there now.
Let me see your other arm.
It's not right.
Yeah,
right.
You're sweating more. Next, we started to install that banding that I was talking about earlier for our trim. And for each bottom piece, we had to plane a 5-degree bevel at the part that was sticking out from the other trim so that water would run off instead of back into the house. These corner boards are held up off of that flashing by about 1/4 inch so that the end grain does not soak water up if it puddles at all on the flashing. To give the corner boards a proportional look, no matter which way you look at them, we use a 3.5 inch board one way and a 4.5 inch board the other, so that in both directions it looks like 4.5 inches.
Another project on the list this week was to fur out these LVL girders to match the width of the 8x8 pressure treated posts that we had them sitting on, and this is strictly for aesthetics, and it does look better. Check it out, I got a fancy job site lunch today. It's fish and chips, see?
Dude, that is the most disgusting thing I've ever seen in my whole entire life.
Man, I'm feeling better already.
So, we're gonna brush it on here till it looks like wood. All right, fellas, there's one. 400 more to go.
All right, we're on it. This right here, call this a kicker strip. Put it down here at the bottom. That way, kicks the siding out just enough.
Just enough to match the other rows of siding that will have a similar thickness overlap onto the previous row of siding below. Once this first row of siding is installed, we then measure layout as many rows up as we can reach at once, because if you measure one row at a time, you will inevitably get way off by the top. Next, we chalk a line between each of these marks to keep the siding straight, and then we install each of these pieces of siding using spiral shank nails that will hold really well, and these are installed through the thickest part of the bottom of the board, about 1 inch from the bottom on this type of siding. For shorter rows of siding between windows, we use a level instead of a chalk line, and Jamie is using a 15 gauge finish nailer at the ends of the boards to prevent the ends from splitting with a thicker shank nail, as they do sometimes. And he's getting really good at nailing with his hand that's been injured. Freaks me out, but he's loving it. Before installing the siding over the windows, we install a drip cap over the top of the window trim. This will keep water running to the outside of the whole window unit.
That was Waffle Boy over there.
Again, a non-sponsored ad, but Big Stretch is my favorite brand of caulk because it seems to last the best and not crack over time. Once we had all of the lap siding done, it was decision time on the shake panels whether to use the staggered edge or the other side, which is a straight edge. Which one's going to look better? That was our choice we had to make, and so we did a couple mock-ups to figure out which one we liked better. Turns out we liked the straight edge better. It was less of a log cabin-y look, I thought, and so we actually had to repaint all of the bottom edges because we had pre-finished the staggered side. A 1x12 band would separate the lap siding from the shake siding, and we decided to fur out this band with these little shims so that it would actually lap over the lap siding just like a piece of siding for waterproofing. Next, we installed the band to a chalk line and nailed it off with our 15 gauge 2.5 inch nails. We also installed a drip cap over the band and then this kicker strip again to kick out the bottom row of the shake panels to match the rest of them. Then when we installed the first row of the shake panels, we held it up 1/4 inch off of our drip cap, and this is pretty common practice to keep it from sitting in water on the drip cap. Ray, look at this ladder. It's all around us.
You got it ground? You got one hook a copper wire?
I'm standing on a metal walkboard.
Wow! Need some gutters!
This storm did end our workday, but we were able to come back in the morning and finish the last few rows of siding on this project. And we're really happy with the different textures and colors and how everything turned out, and the homeowner loves it as well, and that's what's really important to us. Our plumber started by finishing the drain side of this plumbing system, and this is the drain box underneath the shower where the P-trap will go. This shower drain is especially made for tile showers. It's adjustable up and down so that you can set the height to match your shower pan plus the thickness of your tile. This hole will be filled with concrete or compacted gravel before we pour a shower pan that slopes towards this drain later. So here's the problem. Installing a super long piece of a rigid pipe through trusses like this is not really possible. So the plumbers have to fit pieces as long as they can and then join those shorter pieces to make one long run. And they have to do this everywhere in the house where they can't get a longer piece in like this.
Here's that stupid song again.
Here we're drilling to install an anti-siphon frost-proof hose bib out onto the patio. The anti-siphon part of that means that there is a valve that prevents backflow of water from outside to inside your potable water system. The frost-free part is what you're looking at here. The knob on the outside of the house actually shuts the water on and off about 8 inches inside the house at the end of this pipe. When it shuts off, the rest of the water will then drain out because this pipe is set out of level. This pipe will come into the backside of the sink base in our kitchen. And here's another type of plumbing, installing a well pump deep in this well that we have drilled on the property. It's about 700 feet deep, and these pieces of pipe are threaded together, dropped in along with a wire that powers the pump, all the way down to about 20 feet from the bottom. Then the next section of pipe is prepped and threaded together with a metal coupling and dropped down in the well. And this process is repeated over and over until the well pump reaches the desired depth in the well. If your well is deeper than 800 feet or so, you have to use metal pipes instead of these PVC pipes in order to be strong enough to hold the weight of the well pump way down at the bottom. Once the well is completed, it's finished off with a well seal that keeps groundwater and pests from getting in the well, and also a spigot where the county can take water to test the water to make sure it's not contaminated. Next, we had to run a water line from the wellhead over to the house, which is about 200 feet, and also a heavy-duty underground rated power cable from the house back to the well to power the pump. This all has to be about 18 inches below grade so it doesn't freeze in the winter. This water line turns up in the bottom of our footing where the sleeve comes through and into the house. It has to be below the footing because it has to stay 18 inches below grade. Next, we installed a valve box with a shutoff valve so that the water can be shut off just outside of the house in case you want to winterize it or in case you need to shut it off for an emergency. This box will give access to the valve below grade at any point. Next, we added a coupling to go from 1-inch PVC to 1-inch PEX, and then we glued up the rest of the 20-foot sections of pipe that ran all the way back to the well. This is Jared, and he's an electrician. And this is Jared's boss, Nate. I actually built Nate's house, and I noticed that he talks with his hands even more than I do. Nice job, buddy. On every build, I walk through the house with Nate to double check what the homeowner and I have decided on the electrical to make sure it's actually going to work and get the final placements for all the switches and lights and fans.
Up there.
One of the first steps of the process is to mount all the recessed can housings in the ceiling, and sometimes this takes a lot of measuring to get everything symmetrical and lined up with everything else in the house. Next, the switch boxes and receptacle boxes are mounted to the wall, and then wiring is pulled off this spool to connect all of these parts to each other and also back to the main breaker panel. All right, let's finish this thing out by checking out the heat and air system in this home. Most of the supply and the return lines in this home are made from this flexible insulated duct. Each duct is fitted with a boot at the end, which is the metal part you see here, and it is air sealed at each end. Then the duct will be put into place and it will accept a metal register that will be on top of the finished surface. All right, so here's this unit, and it has this one thermostat and the other thermostat downstairs. And the reason that's possible with one unit is because it has two mechanical dampers, and one is for one zone, one is for the other. So if one thermostat is calling for heat and air and the other one's not, this one will close, allowing just cooling on this side, or it could be the opposite, or it could be both at the same time, which is pretty cool. Time for some tongue and grooving. How you like that paintbrush?
Oh man, had better for sure.
It did cost $1.
Yeah. But if you can cut in with this, you can cut in with anything.
That's right. As I mentioned before, we do all of our own painting. This is the second coat of solid color stain going on in place. And this had some challenging spots to cut in, like right here with this tiny brush. We protected the stonework below from drips with these plywood strips from the scrap pile. Okay, we're painting this side of the house, and we got a situation here. Nothing bad to the heat and air guys, but this vent right here comes out like between two pieces of siding. That doesn't work or look very good, so we're gonna cut a block that's flat for that to go on. And I just don't know if they had another one of those, but this type of vent is really meant for a soffit. And I'm not really sure that it's waterproof, so we went and picked up another one like this to replace that, and we're gonna cut a block for it as well.
Yep. Oh, yes.
After getting both of these vent terminations removed, we were able to put our block in place and simply trace it. Looks good. Pretty sweet. All right, we're here at the house, and unfortunately I was not able to video the inspections because of you know why. So what we're gonna do is just walk through and show you what we failed on, because we did fail a few things, believe it or not.
The inspector did not like my 3 flat 2x4s for this header. We did this kind of weird because we had a low wall. This is only 90 inches high. We didn't want to put a 10-inch header in here. It would be unnecessary, and that would push our window down too low. So just my brain thinks this is strong enough. The inspector does not recognize this as a header. So what we're required to do is put in a 2x10 across the vertical members of the truss. This member right here. We're going to put a 2x10 across and attach it to the vertical leg of the truss, making a header up in the ceiling because we don't have a space for a header down here. One of the other things was a fire caulking or draft stopping problem. Right here around this pipe, I had to hack out some of this plywood in order for this pipe to set back in the wall a little bit. And this is now an open wall cavity that leads into a boxed in soffit that leads into a floor system. So basically there's an open airway path that could draft air if there was a fire. That is not allowed. So we have fire foam, and we're gonna fill this area up so that it closes it off, separates it from the floor truss above. We'll go check the backside.
All right, we're walking over here to the third and final thing we're gonna fix for re-inspection right here.
So this is our main water supply coming into the house. It's placed on an exterior wall, and you might think initially that that's a problem, but what we've done is we framed a 2x6 wall so that we can get at least 4 inches of insulation behind this pipe, and then it'll be protected from freezing. Well, anyway, he's afraid that this could be hit with a nail or a screw or anything like that, even though it's not crossing through a framing member. So I have a piece of angle iron that I'm gonna put as a protective cover on the front of this so that it could never be damaged by, somebody hanging a picture on the wall or anything like that.
All right, what is this crazy setup we got here? It is for our radiant floor heating that's electric on this bathroom floor that'll go under the tile in here. The thermostat will be installed right here, and it has 2 conduits running down, and they run out right at the floor, and that'll be in the depth of the tile. One of these will be for the power that runs the mat, and the other one is for the thermostat that goes back up to here, thermostat wire. So that's kind of a crazy looking thing, but that's how we do it. All right, next let's take a look at the installation of this 26 gauge ribbed metal roof, commonly called ag panel. After chalking all of the lines for the rafters, next the guys chalked lines on a 24-inch layout in the opposite direction. This is the spacing of the pine furring strips. The furring strips are then nailed through the top of the rafters with 2.5-inch galvanized ring shank nails, and they also break the end of each board on a rafter so it has a solid nailing surface at the ends. After finishing all of the strips for the upper section of the roof, Devin then makes a stack of the correct number of panels that will cover that roof. He then lines them up perfectly on the end, measures and pre-drills holes through this entire stack at once. These will be the holes that the roofing screws will go through to hold this stuff down. All of these panels had beads of water on them because it had rained, and these guys have a great solution to dry it off. Shake it like crazy, and that really works. Instead of letting each panel dry, they can shake it for 5 seconds and the water just disappears. They next staged each panel up on the lower section of the roof, and that's why they did the upper section first, so they had the lower section to stage. Pretty smart. Here's a look at one of these metal roofing screws. They are self-tapping, galvanized, and have a rubber gasket that is vulcanized to a steel washer so that they can seal the penetration they go through. And as it often does around here, just when the guys were getting cranked up, the rain started to come down. You call this rain? You guys gonna call it quits for real? Let's go. I thought you were roofers. We'll see you tomorrow.
All right.
Of course, they did come back the next day and finish, and this is the finished product. It has gable trim on the ends to cover the edges and a snow break to keep snow from sliding off the roof and killing somebody. You have to do that around here, but not in places like Florida. If you look closely, you can also see the drip edge that goes under the metal and wraps down over the face of the fascia on the eaves. And you can also see this flashing that wraps up under our siding and comes out on top of the metal roof on the top edge. This type of painted metal roof typically lasts 50+ years, with the only maintenance being replacing the screws with the rubber gaskets every 10 to 15 years. After the roof goes on, it's insulation time. This is formaldehyde-free fiberglass insulation. And let's talk about insulation because I know what people are gonna say. Why didn't we use spray foam insulation? Well, spray foam is better, but it also costs about 3 times as much in this area. We live in a very temperate climate. We're in zone 4, which is the yellow, the best one there is in my opinion. So the payback period would be very long due to the fact we don't have to use a lot of energy to heat and cool here. The insulation crew actually starts this project by using spray foam to seal around the doors and windows and also behind the electrical boxes and switches. Those are hard to reach areas. This is the insulation going in the ceilings. It's an R38, that's the R value, and it's about 12 inches thick once it fully expands. These insulation bats have a craft paper on one side, which is actually a vapor retarder because it helps to prevent air movement from the conditioned space to the non-conditioned space. This type of air movement is what causes most moisture problems in a home. The crew that did this install was awesome and able to install almost every bit of this insulation just on stilts with no ladders or scaffolding, and that takes a lot of practice. Just like any building trade, this isn't as easy as it looks to get it done this nice and this quick. It really only took the guys about 3 hours to do the entire house. Along with the other insulation, we are also insulating for sound in this home. This is the master bedroom ceiling, and this is the master bedroom wall facing the living room. This will help keep the master bedroom quiet. The insulation value in the walls here varies from an R15 to an R19. That's because we have some 2x4 walls and some 2x6 walls. Most of the interior walls of this house are finished with drywall, or sheetrock as it's known. This is blueboard, which is moisture-resistant sheetrock for wet areas. One thing we're doing differently on this job than most of our other builds is wrapping the drywall all the way into the window frames. Usually we have wood in these locations. This will give us a super sleek looking design that will match this modern motif. So hanging the drywall is only half the battle. Once it's all hung, you have to come back and put 3 coats of joint compound on every seam to make it look like one solid surface. And that's where the real skill comes into play. This is Ronnie, and he's been doing our drywall since I was a kid. He works with Rex, who has a twin brother named Lex, which can be very confusing. But these guys do a great job, and that's why we keep hiring them over and over. Here Ronnie is bedding the tape, and this drywall tape goes over all the seams in the first coat of mud to make the seams stronger. On outside wall sections like this, the metal corner beading is used as a guide for the finisher's trowel. That way he can apply the mud perfectly and evenly the whole way down. Every single nail hole and screw hole in this whole house is also finished with 3 coats of mud before sanding. Not shown in this video is the knockdown finish on the ceiling, as well as the final sanding after the 3rd coat of mud. And here's what we were up against: dust everywhere, and paint will not stick to dusty surfaces. So to make sure the primer is stuck like it should, we cleaned all of the receptacles and switches. We also cleaned all of the corners of the walls where the dust can tend to pack in. We also cleaned all of the windowsill surfaces, and we even vacuumed all of the wall surfaces to get the dust off. Since we use a paint sprayer to apply the primer, next we had to mask off all of the windows really well, because sprayers are high pressure. It can actually blow the plastic off if it's not done well. Man, there's so many windows.
Who put all these windows in?
This is taking forever.
At least I'm not doing it by myself.
This concrete floor did get a little dirtier than I had hoped, and since it's going to be the finished floor, we used this flapper sander to get every bit of anything off this floor before covering it in parchment paper.
It's the worst noise I've ever heard in my life.
This accent wall in the master bedroom will be finished with maple planks, so for now we could actually just staple the plastic over the windows to save ourselves a little bit of time. And finally, to wrap out this prepping process that took us a whole day, we laid down parchment paper on every inch of this concrete floor to protect it from the overspray. Well, I've got it all loaded in here, all of the paint and primer, got the sprayer, of course, waters, and if it all goes bad, we've always got this on the back, just in case. Ray, did you bring your suit?
No. I can just wear my beard like this.
All right, good to go.
So usually this process goes quick and easy with the sprayer, and I planned on even going mountain biking this very afternoon, but very quickly realized that was not going to happen because the sprayer kept clogging over and over and over.
And again, dude, I'm gonna snap. I swear this is.
The struggle is real, folks, I'm telling you. So real. It's hard to see with these on. That doesn't really do it justice, but that's about what I was looking at when I was doing this.
2% milk.
It looks like 2% milk, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's definitely one way to do it.
This is a super important step of the paint process that I think a lot of people skip, sanding the primer to get it all evenly smooth. This is our sanding pole. I like the round ones because they don't flip over like the rectangle ones. We use a foam sanding block to get around any tight areas around switches and receptacles because this large sanding pad can catch the edge of the paper in these areas and tear it. Not good. We're using an eggshell finish paint on this project, which looks pretty nice and still gives you some cleanability. I think flat actually looks the best, but obviously it doesn't clean very well. We used a 1/2-inch nap roller to apply the paint, and around all the windows and the ceilings we cut in with a good brush. A cheap brush won't get you anywhere.
You know, painting's kind of like mowing grass. Just one row at a time. When you get done, it looks good, you know?
Painting's nothing like cutting grass. I love cutting grass. I would rather dig a ditch underneath this whole entire house than paint. One down, 400 to go.
Yes, we're about to do this wall, and you know what? We better connect the main water line, you know, before we cover this up. That'd be really important to do that. So we got a guy on the horn who's gonna come out and do that real fast for us. And with that major disaster avoided, we started chopping up this wood. Some of the ends really need chopped off. You can see this huge split, and we started installing it on the walls. We get to use some of the finer woodworking tools that I've been missing so dearly, and this is a fun one here. This stairway wall is one of the 3 walls in the home that has this wood accent. And we chose this one because I thought it would look awesome to have a wood wall coming up underneath these wood treads and risers so that this whole portion of the house would look like it's built out of this maple wood. It'd be a really nice accent. With a couple cups of afternoon coffee, we were able to finish up this accent wall in the master bedroom as well. And now we're ready for Arlo to go crazy with his sander.
So you know how like every orbital sander you use, that the middle of the pad gets everything stuck on it?
Yep.
So this one, the Festool blows air out the middle,
Okay.
which blows the dust over to the edges where it's picked up.
This thing is like a whale.
Yeah, exactly.
Local.
So with absolutely no dust involved, Arlo sanded down these walls with a 120 grit sandpaper and made them look super smooth. This is a random orbital sander, and you can see here the random orbit in slow-mo. This way it doesn't leave circles of sanding marks on your wood.
It's working stuff for suckers.
I'm looking at the biggest one right now.
See that? That is not flat, and the wood floor won't really do great on that. So even across here, you can see actually we've marked it with a pencil already. I'll pretend like I'm doing it again. There we go. Mark those areas out.
Here's a look at the engineered floor we're using on this project. You can see it has multiple layers of plywood, alternating grain directions, with a real wood veneer on top that gives it a lot more stability.
Oh, it looks like a Frosty from Wendy's, the chocolate Frosty.
After finally establishing the location of this bullnose, we were able to snap a chalk line across the rest of the floor as a reference for our first row of wood. It's the same distance off the exterior wall on both ends. After being the glue guy all day, Ray had to actually shave the hair off his kneecaps to get the glue to come off.
Man, I just told the guys to stay out of the glue, and then I dragged the air hose right through the glue.
Dude, it's hard to find good help nowadays, you know what I'm saying?
For real. I can't even trust myself to do this.
This is our geared flooring jack, and it really does a great job to keep the rows of flooring tight near the walls where you can't use the big flooring nailer. Hardwood flooring is another one of those projects that's just kind of like mowing grass. You do it one row at a time, and when you're done, it looks good. Our biggest challenge here is just to keep the glue off the surface of the wood and off ourselves.
Can I get you guys to stop sweating all over the floor?
Gosh, dude.
Just like most other wood flooring, we shoot the last row with face nails, and you can fill these holes if they look too noticeable. And I'll also mention that we are leaving a gap around all the wall surfaces, just in case there is any expansion with this product. It is pretty stable compared to regular hardwood though.
Oh, a lot of bullets.
Up next, we get started with the install of this giant soaking tub, and it's the most important feature in the entire house for the homeowner, Tina. We actually designed the whole master suite around this tub and the tub's view. On a tub like this, it has to sit on the feet to bear the weight, but in reality, you want it to look like it's hanging from the rim, so we need to frame pretty precisely to make it work out.
21.
To get going, we have to remove this drain box, which has been in the slab since we poured the slab like a long time ago. It's still full of the gravel and water from when we put it in here. Once this is removed, we can set the tub, and the plumber will have access to the drain line that's under the slab. For one of the plates in this tub framing, we needed to notch out a big spot, and this is a great trick for doing that on the job site using saw curves, making a bunch of cuts and then knocking out the material with the claw of your hammer. It's pretty fun too. You gonna clean up this mess, bro?
All right, it takes pretty much 1 pack of shims to hang 1 door. That's if your opening is fit pretty nice. If it's a little too large, you might just consider getting 2 packs per door, all right? So these say they have thin tips, first of all, and then they say they're 100% usable. That's good, because I wouldn't want it to be just 50% usable or something like that. So make sure you buy the 100% usable ones.
Yeah, that is good news.
I don't want to bore anyone to death, but I think it's great information, so we'll run through hanging one of these doors. I like to shim for the hinge side first before installing the door because it's easier. What I'll do is take my 6-foot level and establish plumb, and that way when I go to put the door in, I already have a plumb surface for the hinge side to mount to, and that saves a lot of time and energy. I usually trim the shims flush with the drywall before installing the door with a pull saw or an oscillating saw if you got some ear protection. Other prep work that I did before installing the door was to make sure that the rough opening was the right width, the door handing was the right direction, and the jamb was the right depth. I then moved to the latch side of the jamb, and I used the door as a guide instead of using a level to plumb this side of the jamb. I do, however, use my level as a straight edge to make sure that this whole jamb is straight, and I add shims as needed. And I also always check that the boring for the door handle and the latch lines up vertically. Sometimes you have to trim the door jamb to make this work.
Hey, do you think I'm ready to start hanging some doors?
No, I don't think so. And finally for today, we're checking out these 6-inch seamless gutters going on the house. For metal roofs, it's important to get 6-inch gutters because the water shoots off the roof a lot faster than on a shingled roof, and it could shoot right over the gutter. The word seamless may be a little deceiving. They are extruded from one piece of roll aluminum so that there's no joints down the run, but there are joints at the ends and at the corners. As soon as the piece of gutter comes out, these gutter clips are installed before the piece gets cut, capped, and taken over to the house. It always looks crazy to see one man installing a piece of this gutter way up on a ladder by themselves when it looks so cumbersome and heavy, but really, with one fastener, this thing will be stuck to this fascia. All right, we're gonna do the guillotine. That's what chops it. Man, I'm a sissy.
Instructions are for losers. We probably do need
No, we do need it. Actually, I was gonna get it out of the trash.
This home about 4 months ago was nothing more than a sketch on my desk. And this is the original drawing along with some original notes that I found after cleaning out my desk the other day. Pretty cool. And now with the home almost complete, you get a really good feeling of what it'll feel like to live and be on this property with this house. Our first project for today is installing this heat mat that goes under the tile in the master bath. And we have a little snag with this one. This heat mat is about 2 feet wide and it has to run in a linear fashion from the thermostat and the power source around the room. So first I take measurements to see the best way to orient this mat. Any place that the mat won't fit, you have to pull the wire off the matting and snake it around in the same fashion that it is in the matting. Pretty soon we realized we had way too much material.
We just cut that or what? I don't see anywhere where it... If you do cut it, what do you do with the rest of it?
As we were finishing, we realized we have like half of a roll of the mat left. And you cannot shorten the mat. Like you can't cut the wire and make it a smaller roll. I just wasted $700 and all the time I spent putting that down. So that's something. Well, folks, yesterday's work, $700 worth of mat, getting torn up. Yeah.
No, they said they wanted it extra warm.
I'm gonna tell you guys, I was actually so angry yesterday. I was like so mad I didn't want to talk to anybody. Bad day. Yeah. Round 2, new heat mat. Hoping it goes better this time because that was not good last time. Cut that. No cutting.
No, cut that.
Don't cut that. Yeah.
Got it.
All right, we're good.
Perfect.
And on our second try, we actually got it right.
Oh man, you got the floor done?
Yeah, man. No big deal. Cable monitor, and that's gonna monitor to make sure that as we're covering this whole mat in thin set, we don't break it somewhere or cut it. If we do, this thing's gonna go crazy. Actually, let me let's do a little test here. I'm gonna do that. After double checking the electrical resistance in the wire of this mat, we then covered it with thin set. This is the same thin set you would use to lay tile, and tile will actually go right over top of this with another layer of thin set. All right, well, we got it done. I'm not gonna say it looks beautiful, but I think it's good enough to lay tile on, and it's done, so we'll see. Later that day, the homeowner, Tina, came by for a visit to check on our progress. And communicating with the homeowner is a huge part of building a custom house. I talk to Tina almost every day to make sure we're doing exactly what she wants us to do in this home. On this visit, we took some time to design a custom barn door that would be in the master bedroom, and also to iron out the details of the kitchen cabinets we're gonna build.
No way! What? It moves? No way. Dude, that is crazy. Hey, did you know Eric's putting that light together for you?
You mean the Death Star?
The Death Star?
Yeah.
What do you think about that thing?
Exactly what Jono said.
What'd Jono say?
The Death Star.
The Death Star.
What'd you say? What'd you say, John?
What did you say?
All right, we ordered some IKEA lights. Well, we didn't. The client wanted these IKEA lights here, and we're just reading the instructions here, and it looks like a funny guy is gonna get confused, and then we're gonna find a landline and call IKEA store, like the actual store, and then we're gonna be really happy about it. What do you think?
Yes.
Let's follow along as Nate wires up one receptacle. First, he cleans each wire to make sure there's a good connection. Next, he puts a little loop in the end of each wire. These will be to attach the wire to the side of the receptacle using the screws. Now, you can stab these wires into slots in the back of the outlet and it will pass code, but Nate said as an electrician, he would never do that. By the way, he's wearing gloves so he doesn't smudge our white walls.
Well, we're doing something kind of crazy here. Here's the problem. We bought stair treads. These are beautiful hickory stair treads. Problem is they don't have returns on the side, and I really want it to have returns. We cut a small piece of wood off of the end of the tread, and we're gonna glue a little block on here that makes a return. We will also take a round over bit, and we'll round this same bullnose profile all the way across the end grain of the tread.
And the very next day out on the job, we are ready to install these stair treads. I can't tell you everything there is to know about installing stair treads in this short video, but I will tell you we always install the stair risers first, flushing them with the stringer above, and we use lots of liquid nails or other adhesive to make sure that nothing squeaks.
So what we're gonna do is we're gonna bump our tread until the return hits that. So we know that this is spaced precisely. And if I can get it out of here without moving it, wow, that's tight fit. Now we're gonna use the same spacer against the wall. We're gonna simply place it against the skirt and scribe it. Okay, great.
That's our cut?
Yeah, and actually, I don't know if that's angled or square. It doesn't matter. We're simply gonna cut the line. Whether it's perfectly square, whether it is a little bit angled, it really doesn't even matter. We're not gonna check and we don't need to know. All we know is we cut that line and it fits that position.
For stair treads and risers that butt into a stringer on both ends, we use this special stair jig. It automatically gives you the length and the angles, and you simply trace them over your workpiece. After all of the treads and risers were installed, we used a scribe molding underneath each stair nosing and up the side of each riser, leaving a 1/4 inch reveal. These were shot on with an 18 gauge brad nailer, and we will fill these holes later after one coat of polyurethane. I don't ever want to touch another tile in my life, ever. That's it. I don't do showers. We don't do showers. So
But
that's
you
the
do.
last one.
But you do. Look how good it looks.
So let's rewind a few days back to just the framing. We'll show you all the steps we took to make this a beautiful and a functional shower that will be leak-free forever.
Okay, if you're thinking about doing your own shower like this built in, there's a couple important things that make this way better. Put in some 2x blocking that comes up pretty far. This is 2x12 because your rubber liner needs to roll up and have something solid to tack against. Now, the rubber liner is going to be folded in the corners, And that makes a big bump in your tile sometimes. So what we do to avoid that is we hollow out an area with a bit here. I just used a regular paddle bit, and I sunk it in about 1/4. That way the buildup of 3 layers of this fold will be recessed and flush.
This first step before the rubber liner, we're using a 4-to-1 mud bed mix on top of the concrete slab, which is actually just flat. And we're trying to get a slope towards the shower drain flange from the edges. After cutting the liner to size, Andy then folds in about 8 inches on each side of the liner so it will easily lay flat in the shower, and he can center it up easily as well.
Yeah, you want to pull that out of there.
There we go. Nice work.
The liner is tucked into the corners, and the excess material is folded into the recessed areas that Jamie made. Next, the top of the liner is tacked with some roofing nails. That's 1/2 inch backer board. Go behind the tile. Andy says do not drop it on the liner. To fasten the backer board, we use these 1 5/8" zinc-coated backer on screws that have a serrated head that helps them drill in so the head sits flush.
Oh no. 3 in a row.
Fiberglass, eh?
Yeah, a little fiberglass reinforcement there. You want it wet to where when you reach down and grab a ball, it forms in a ball, but it's not squishy.
Andy starts the mud pan by compacting the 4-to-1 mix to our level line drawn on the wall. That will be a reference all the way around. Next, he starts working it down towards the drain, and we're shooting for a 1/4 inch of drop per foot here, and that's a pretty standard number for water to drain properly. Next, we cover all of the screw holes and all of the seams in the hardy backer with a layer of thin set. On the seams, we use a fiberglass mesh tape to help reinforce the joint. This will give us a much tighter seal before we do the next step of the process. Once the thin set has dried, we can then roll on 2 coats of this roll-on rubber membrane. This seals the backer and keeps water from ever penetrating. And this stuff rolls on blue, but dries green, so you know when it's dry.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah.
You have to play some slow jams to that.
Yeah, I like it a lot.
Dude, you're making me weirded out.
Sorry, just 3 dudes in the shower. Ain't nothing weird about that.
Yeah, especially with your talk there, Bum.
Yeah.
As an extra precaution, we also roll on 2 coats on the floor pan, which is not necessary with the rubber liner. To finish the edges of the shower, I'm using a Sluter strip instead of bullnose tile. And I actually like this look because I think it's cleaner with a more modern look. What's your favorite part about doing tile, Jay?
Nothing. Well, my favorite part of doing tile, I get to clean out.
The next morning we got going by drilling this hole for the shower head with a diamond bit hole saw. And these are kind of tricky because they don't have a pilot bit, so you have to start by sinking the edge, still centering it where you want it to be. If you do it right, it looks good.
What happened?
I gotta get this thing out of here to actually set it, but we cut the tiles too tight.
Look at that.
Saved it. Next, I got going with the floor tile, and I chose to do this last so that I didn't mess it up while sticking the wall tile. I start by going around the drain perfectly centered with one of these sheets. You have to use small tiles on the floor because they have to be able to follow the contour of the shower pan, which big tiles can't. And finally, last, I grout the shower, starting with the walls and then the floor. I wiped it down a total of 3 times using clean water each time to get this thing done and done and done. It's done.
I got a good video for today. Probably a video of me getting in my car and leaving.
tile sucks.
The crew is in full swing to finish this project out in the next couple weeks, and it's a bunch of small projects near the end, but luckily we have a super versatile crew, and I'm so thankful they know how to do everything from block work to painting. And we even got the chance to do a few custom showpieces like this barn door in the master bedroom. We'll show you about that as well. Turns out the homeowner really loves it. Let's start out with the stain going onto the concrete floors that will give a cool modern feel to the inside of this home.
We'll be doing 1 part dye to 1 part acetone reducer. All that is put into a handy dandy pump sprayer that can apply it with a fine mist.
Now normally when you do acid stained floors, you have to come back and neutralize the acid later, but due to the color selection, we used a dye here, which is diluted and doesn't need neutralizing, so once it dries, it can get a top coat.
Well, I'm gonna leave Jeff with this thing here. Apparently he's got it under control. He's got the bedroom and the closet nearly done.
Up next, let's dive into building this custom barn door, and with anything, we need a scale drawing, and so here is Jamie at the desk. It took a couple tries, but after a while, Jamie came up with a design that he liked, and it was time to go into production. After all the frame pieces were ripped to width, Jamie and Arlo ripped a dado, which is simply a slot, into one edge of each board. Next, all the frame pieces are cut down to their final length, and then some are taken back to the table saw to have material removed to form the tenons in the end of the rail piece. Next, mortises are put into the stiles that will receive the tenons on the rails.
It's gonna be really close to my drawing over there. By the way, I'm using a 23 gauge pin nailer and a little bit of glue to put these strips on, nailing it to the plywood panel.
Back out on the job, it's time to check out our stained floors and install this barn door.
I did not get to watch the guy put the clear on the floor, but here it is. Now this will get 1 additional coat of clear when we're all done.
Our first step for installing this barn door is to install the mounting track to the wall. We tacked it on and then checked for level. Once we verified it was actually level, we came back with 3-inch lags into the framework.
You got that there, Chief?
Meanwhile, Arlo had our barn door and he was drilling to mount the rollers on top of this solid maple door. Next, we use a small router bit to put a dado in the bottom of the door that will receive this guide that keeps the door from swinging in or out. A hole is drilled in the top of the door to receive a catch that will stick out of the top of the door. This catch will latch into a hydraulic piston on each end of the range of motion to slowly close it and also hold the door fully in the open or closed position.
Nice. Perfect. Dollar store glasses.
Oh, yeah.
Now I can use standard screws instead of having to use masonry screws to hold this guide down.
Love that on the knuckles. Arlo has been counting the side pieces that we need so we know how many pieces to rip out of our material here on the table saw. So right now we have all the side material in long pieces. Now we're gonna break them down a little bit more outside because I don't have enough room in my shop to run these things through the saw sideways.
In case you were wondering, we don't normally build the kitchens in our houses, but on this one, it's small. We wanted the cabinets to match the rest of the features in the house, and there's not many doors and no upper cabinets. So it was a pretty good incentive for us to go ahead and make the cabinets.
All right, we have the first box. This is gonna be kind of 2 cabinets built into one. That's why it's so huge. It's the sink cabinet plus a little dummy.
Once the bulk of the cabinet boxes were assembled, it was time to process the material to make the face frames. In this case, we chose to use hard maple, which will match the accent wall that's in the same room as the kitchen at the Modern Mountain Getaway.
Is that a pretty comfortable work height there?
Oh yeah.
Can you deal with that?
I think I can deal with it.
Okay, good to go. Oh no, I have nails.
Once the cabinets were assembled, it was time to move locations to the upper shop where there's more room to do the finishing. The next morning, we were back on the job, and it was immediate disaster.
Sauce down! Hot sauce down!
Got your chicken nuggets and start dipping right now because it ain't gonna be good.
Break for lunch!
I'm not above that, it's still good. Generally speaking, it's easier to install upper cabinets before base cabinets, but in this case, we have no upper cabinets, so we get going with the base cabinets. This was our largest cabinet that we had, and it's the refrigerator cabinet. And all it does is cover the sides of the refrigerator, so you only see the nice stainless steel front part. Some cabinets are harder to install than others, and definitely in this case, the most difficult one was the sink base. It has pipes coming in one way and wires coming in from another, and they all have to be fitted into very precisely cut holes in different sides of the cabinet as the cabinet is lifted and set into place. After this cabinet was installed, we could move on to the peninsula, which butts into this cabinet partially. And since there's no wall to screw the cabinet to, it has to be fastened down to the floor, which is a concrete floor, which is trouble. So what we have to do is Tapcon and liquid nail a block down to the floor at the side of each cabinet, and that way we have something to attach the cabinet to. Once these peninsula cabinets were installed, we then covered the back with a piece of 3/4 Advantech plywood, and this is to give us a nailing depth to install the stone veneer that would be the finished surface for the back of this cabinetry. And we did this in about 10 minutes. Pretty awesome. On the cabinets that do have doors, we simply used a piece of plywood banded with a piece of maple for a modern looking door.
Hey, what's going on?
Oh, you know, another day.
You know it's 10, right?
It's 9:54, actually.
And I happen to notice you got your bike on the back there, huh?
You never know
what's gonna happen. You have some alternate plans today?
You just never know is all I gotta say. I mean, could be work, could be biking.
Man, to be the boss, man. Living the dream, living the dream.
To get going with our wood counters, we first attached a piece of 3/4 inch plywood to the top of our cabinetry. We did this using pocket screws from the bottom instead of through the top, so that anytime later if someone wanted to remove this countertop, they could actually get to the screws. Next, we used an ample amount of wood glue to attach a 1/2 inch layer of plywood to the 3/4 inch base layer, and we staggered the joints in different places. To pull everything tight until the glue dried, we used a narrow crown stapler with 1-inch staples. So on to making those maple top pieces. These are a 1/2 inch thick by about 5 inches wide to cover the counter. And we're using the 3 main tools that we use every time we do anything in the shop: the table saw, the joiner, and the planer. These things are the real workhorses of making any piece of wood into something usable. Last, each board is resawn on the bandsaw to take each piece down to a final thickness of 1/2 inch. The next morning out on the job, our first project was to apply a piece of maple banding to the edge of the plywood substrate. And Jamie always keeps a bunch of these tiny paintbrushes in his truck to apply glue to smaller work pieces like this. These were attached using our 23 gauge pin nailer, and this thing has a 2-stage trigger instead of a safety that you have to depress, so you can do really accurate placement. After all of the banding was attached, we then attached the planks to the top of the plywood substrate using glue and the same pin nailer. You can see why we did it this way. A wide plank countertop looks way more awesome. We then let the glue dry for 2 days and sanded the planks flat again. There was some cupping with the moisture. Then we started to apply our 2-part epoxy finish using this homemade bull float that Arlo made, and it worked great. This is what it looked like after the second coat of epoxy was applied, and it looks good from a distance but not up close. You really have to cut this down with a sander to make it smooth. For the top coat, we used a varnish by Total Boat, and there's two reasons we wanted to use a top coat. Number one is that we wanted a satin finish, which the epoxy is not, and we also needed a UV inhibitor, which the epoxy does not have in it. This will prevent the wood from yellowing. We applied the first coat with brushes, but for the second coat, Jamie called an override and wanted to put it on with a mini roller, which left an orange peel. And Jono and I were super skeptical until the very end that this would lay flat, but it did. And looked perfect. Good job, Jamie. Up next, let's take a look at how we built and installed those floating shelves you just saw in the last clip. During the framing phase of the project, we welded up these rods and plates and screwed them to the side of the studs in the kitchen. Now it's time to actually figure out how to build these floating shelves to make them work with the rods we installed. So first we make a dummy shelf.
That was all right. So pull it back off and see how tough it is. Ooh, it's not bad. I think that's what we want.
After we confirmed that this would actually work, it was time to build the real shelves. We used maple plywood 3/4 inch thick with the spacers, and then simply banded the edges with some maple that matched the rest of the kitchen cabinets. This was glued and shot on with brad nails. We've built floating shelves in several houses over the years, but the way we did these, I think, was the easiest, strongest, and most adjustable way we've ever done it, so we'll probably keep doing it this way. After a good sanding and some finish, these shelves simply slipped onto the rods we had coming out of the wall. And that was it. Done. And finally, to finish out this kitchen, we're building 2 small pieces of concrete counter for either side of the stove. And this will make our form, making an 1 3/4 thick piece of concrete counter to match the depth of our wood counters. And if I had to do it again, I would use melamine instead of tape, but it worked. And last, we put a bead of caulk where the front edge of the countertop would be, so it would come out with a rounded edge. Once we had our concrete mixed the way we liked it, which I'm not sure if it's right or not since this is the first time I've ever done concrete counters, we simply added it to the form and then jiggled it to get any bubbles out. We also tapped the side of the forms with a hammer the whole time to try to get any air bubbles to come out into the surface to prevent any pitting, which we still did have some pitting, and we'll show you how we dealt with that in just a minute.
We are gonna try to polish some concrete today. You still got smudges on your lens. You got fingerprints on the lens.
I think it's good.
Can you see me?
Yeah, I can see you.
Okay. All right, we're putting some water on the piece of concrete that we're gonna try to polish, all right? I have never polished concrete before. Well, what I did is I went on Amazon, I found these abrasives here. These are wet diamond abrasives of sorted grits. So we got a hook and loop here. Wow, that's really on there good. 50 grit. There we go. We got water on here, and we'll give it the first. Now I got stuff on the lens for sure. Wow! And maybe we should do this edge here. That's nice. Like that. I forgot my tanks today.
After we went over both of the pieces of countertop with the coarsest grit, it was time to fill the voids that we had. And to do this, we actually just used some floor leveler that we had left over laying in the shop.
Good, nice slurry.
Okay.
I mean, it needs to get actually like,
oh, wow.
This is what we're talking about. This is hand rubbed.
Your skin's gonna come off your hand.
It'll grow back.
There's one done. Let's do number 2.
Number 2.
And we let them sit overnight. By the next morning, our filler had dried, and Jason took a small block of wood to take off the excess material before sanding with the finer grits. You know what they say?
One way to do it, bub.
To adhere the countertop pieces to the cabinet, we simply just use some trim grip adhesive and then set the countertop piece right on top.
Oh, don't get any on you now.
We also sealed these tops with some ching, countertop sealer and wax to keep them from ever getting stained, which could happen. And that's it. Our homeowner Tina now has a beautiful and durable modern kitchen with wood and concrete countertops, perfect for cooking and entertaining. So invite us over, Tina. We'd love to hang out.
All right, they say you're supposed to drain your air compressor every day.
Every day. Who says that? They say.
Air compressor people. Well, this one did get dry. Oh yeah. Okay, here's our handy base plate, 4 inches square. So I made this jig here that basically will space my posts 1 inch in and 1 inch in. This is a 2x2 post, and in theory, that would make it perfectly square and perfectly centered. Now, it would be really difficult to do this without a jig.
I'll bet you guessed it already, but Jamie also had a jig to help him drill these holes perfectly in each corner as well. Back out on the job, we placed each post roughly in its position. Now, there is an odd spacing because there's 12 steps and 4 posts, which means one space has to be different. Next, we set up our laser level in lock mode to cast a line across these posts at the exact angle of the stair nosings so that we could cut them off all perfectly straight. You could use a string line to do this as well. Next, we took each post outside and cut them off with a cutoff disc on a grinder at 36.4 degrees exactly. With the posts reinstalled all in the same locations, we could then measure for the top cap, and if you look closely, we're actually mitering where the top cap hits the bottom railing. After it was all tack welded, Jamie went back around and put a continuous bead on each weld, followed up with a lot of grinding to make these all smooth and finished looking.
So, it's Arlo. So we've used our grinder with a hard grinding disc to take off the majority of the weld. We're trying to blend these surfaces out, and you know, we're not going for absolute perfection here, but I like to use a file sometimes because you can kind of skew it across the curved parts here. And in essence, the file won't get down into a low spot. It can only remove a high spot.
After grinding and filing for about an hour, the final step was to use an orbital sander actually to smooth it all up.
So in an effort to keep the parts that we made shiny looking more like nothing happened here, I'm gonna just squirt some spray paint on it lightly. Not gonna heavy coat it, just lightly. I'm gonna let that dry, and then we can just barely scuff that with some sandpaper, and it will kind of just give it the same look as the pole, okay? You know, you gotta get a little artistic with it, okay? I'm starting to get that medium coverage I'm looking for. I certainly don't want it to be all painted. That would be the worst. So, I think, I don't know, maybe I should have hired Ray to do this part. I think, see, that's looking about right now. That looks generally like this. All right, that's good, I'm gonna leave it alone. Go ahead and get a drill with an extension. It's gonna find out whether or not we actually put blocking in the wall. What do you think, bud?
I don't want to know. Unless it's yes, then I want to know.
Okay.
I would say that's a yes.
That sounded good.
And with the steel frame complete, it's time to break out the stainless steel cables and turnbuckles and string it up. For the cable terminations, we drilled 3/8 inch holes, and we actually found it easiest to do this with a step-up bit. You can see where we marked where we needed to stop drilling. The holes in the intermediate posts need to actually be drilled on an angle so that the cable will pass straight through on the angle. That's hard to do. You can't start a drill bit into metal at an angle very easily, so we drilled a hole straight through and then took a bit and sort of ovaled the hole out by tilting it up as I ran the drill. Once all of the holes were drilled, it was time to start cutting the cable with our cable cutters, and Ray and Jason both claim to be experts in this.
And just go wham and slam it. I taught you this.
No, I taught you that move.
Dude, you are so full of crap, bro.
Once the cable is cut, you can thread it through the holes and then swage the ends on. One end is just a termination, the other end is a turnbuckle, which is a fancy word for a tensioner. And And the final step in this whole process of building this railing is to clean and then put a clear top coat on all of the steel parts. That's it.
All right, see you, bub. See you later.
All right, I'm out of here. See you guys later.
Yeah. We did get a temporary CO, which means we can turn the power on before we get the real CO, so we can check things out. For things like this, one of the light bulbs was set on a different color temperature than the rest, so I had to pull it out and fix it. With the permanent power now on, we could also move all of the appliances into place, hook them up, and check them out. Our electricians also returned for a day to finish up some of the final light fixtures that we didn't have initially. In this case, we didn't have the floating shelves mounted for them to mount the under cabinet lights to, so that was a task that still had to be done. To pass our final inspection, we have to display this energy certificate on the inside of the electrical panel. This sheet has important information like the solar heat gain coefficient in your windows as well as the U factor. It also tells the insulation value of your walls, ceilings, and floors, and also displays the duct leakage test results for your home.
Moment of truth.
Okay, a lot of shit.
In the master bathroom, we still had to finish building the floating vanity and mounting this vessel sink at the correct height.
See where we're sitting there. All right, now slide toward the front.
Another project we always do right at the end is mount shelving in the closets. In this case, it was all Jason with a laser, and he knocked it out.
That might be a problem.
I think if we get a little bit of that Flex Seal stuff, we can take care of that problem right now.
Yeah?
Oh yeah, totally.
Did they make it in white or off-white?
Yeah.
We just use the black. Black would work.
Here's our water heater before it was hooked up, and here it is after, with all of the water lines run, a pressure bladder, and also a whole house filter because this house is on a well. Just imagine if all of this junk was caught in the valves of your plumbing fixtures the first time you turn the water on. Right now I'm adjusting the valve levels down here, the stops, so that the amount of water coming out of the faucet can't overdo the drain because there's no overflow on this vessel sink. And right now I'm getting a little too much water. You can see it's climbing. So we're gonna take the stops a little more closed. We set the base of the tub in the master bath in a bed of mortar, then hooked up the faucet, which leaked immediately, brand new out of the box. And that's what you get sometimes. Here's a look at the replacement. My recommendation, buy Moen or Delta if you can help it. Hit it. Other odds and ends on the plumbing side are hooking up the washer and dryer, and you have to knock out this washer drain plug, which always wants to go down the hole of the drain. Not a good design. Another huge part of this home being comfortable and usable as a home is having heat and air. Here the system is being charged up with the correct coolant at the correct pressure, and here's the brains of the operation that controls the mechanical dampers. And we finish it off with some Wi-Fi thermostats.
I was thinking
Like that?
I thought it was this, man.
Hey, let's try them one on top of the other, though.
We came up here to put these on the post. It's already on the post, just covered in kudzu. So I think what we'll do is replace it with those that are reflective.
Yeah, definitely.
Another one of the small but seemingly endless tasks we had to get done was to fill in these control joints and do some clear caulk here before the final coat of clear goes on the concrete floor. And after one more final and very thorough cleaning of the floor, the final coat of clear finish was applied. If you're wondering who shoots these videos, it's me. Look at that. It's hard to shoot videos with mirrors in the room. so that's why we waited till last minute. Yeah. We don't always hang mirrors for the clients, but in this case, Tina was so awesome to work for, I will gladly hang all the mirrors she can hand me.
Well, it all comes down to this. As far as I know, this will be the last nail shot in this house. All right, well, here goes nothing. Well, that was easy.
It was sort of anticlimactic, actually.
Yeah. Oh, well, let's get out of here.
And that's it. This house is done, start to finish.
So another one in the books, and we want to give you a tour of the place, show you how it turned out. And by the way, you can rent this place on Airbnb or something like that. I'll put a link in the description. So let's get going and take a quick tour. Come with me. We'll take a look. So welcome to the living, dining, kitchen area. It's all one space here because this is a small house. And so all those spaces are combined, so we didn't have a bunch of tiny rooms. Nice organized glasses and dishes. It looks amazing. Over here on the plans, I had a wood stove. Tina decided not to do that because it's gonna be a rental and there was a risk of someone getting burned. Of course, that's not good. So it looks like it's gonna be like a seating area. Another thing I love about this living, dining, kitchen area is this. It opens up to the outdoors. Isn't that nice? Especially when you have a view like that. I love it. All right, next, let's take a walk into the master bedroom, which is right off the stairwell. This is a modest size room, but plenty big if you have a look at the size of the bed. We're also gonna put in some floating nightstands. Since there's no nightstand here, Jamie's on his way right now with the brackets and the boards to build those so you could do like a lamp or anything else on the nightstand that you would normally do. Off the master bedroom, we have this awesome barn door we built from scratch. That opens up nice and softly to the master bathroom, which the homeowner's favorite thing about this house is definitely right in here. Let's have a look. Here it is, a giant air jacuzzi tub looking at the view, and they may have to get curtains, but I don't know, there's no neighbors, there's no one that's gonna look in, so they'll just have to figure that out. Over here we have the shower, and we do have a glass shower door on order. That's gonna be a 3/8 glass, frameless, so this is just temporary, but you can see what we did there. And of course we have the vessel sink, which is a large piece of stone carved out. The laundry room didn't get a lot of attention while we were building because it's a laundry room, but there it is. And she's gonna do a curtain across here. So small house, small laundry room, but it works. And actually, let's stop on the stairs because the stairs are kind of a really cool feature of this home. We've got a maple wall that's made out of maple planks, hard maple, and we have this really cool modern looking steel and cable rail that we built from scratch. We have these like hidden tensioners, so there's no turnbuckle visible on 3/16 cables. And this is two parts. It's a 2x2 frame for the railing, and then a 1 5/8 outside diameter continuous handrail on the inside of that, and that way it passes code. Heading on up, these are hickory treads, and the reason we chose hickory is because it matches maple really closely. Like, this is maple, this is hickory. You can see how well it matches. That's a good hard wood. It won't scratch or dent really easily, and it matched. Well, and the other reason is that the floor up here, in order to match our maple, is wide plank hickory, which it turned out great as well, and I'll give you a little close up of that. Welcome to the loft. This is a really nice space, has vaulted ceilings, and it's gonna be like a combo bedroom, extra living area for whoever stays here. The paint scheme of this house is white on white on white. The walls are a flat, extra white, and the trim is a semi-gloss, extra white. And I didn't really know how that would look, but actually it's very soothing. It's very nice. And I actually really like it. I wish my house was so clean and bright looking actually. But I have two huge dogs, so in my house there would just be brown streaks down both sides, so I'm not gonna be able to do this. One other feature that makes this home look more modern and cool, in my opinion, are using these black window frames. These are Anderson windows, the 100 series, made out of a material called Fibrex, which is kind of like extruded Trex decking, and then it's painted, so you can get these really nice commercial looking black windows, and they're not super expensive like it would have been if we would have ordered wood clad windows to get the black cladding on the outside. In the loft, there's two doors. One door leads to the mechanical room,
and storage room, which has our heat and air, hot water heater, and the electrical panel, and the water filter. Since we're on a well here, that's important. And behind door number 2 is just a half bath. And we just put this mirror in like 5 minutes ago. So just a small vanity, toilet, mirror, everything you need to get freshened up in the morning or use the bathroom. Some other details that weren't in the videos is this top cap, which is maple to match everything. Turned out really nice. And then we have this little ledge, I guess I would call it, and she's used it sort of as an art display. Those are moss balls, if you're wondering. And I think they look pretty cool. I don't know how they got them up there. A couple little details on the outside. I intentionally offset this bump out by this much so that they could fit a grill on their patio without it blocking the window. And that looks like it worked out perfectly. So I'm happy about that. And if we go around here, we also have this little hidden area, which right now it's, sorry Tina, this is the junk from moving in, but eventually this is going to be decked out as a little Zen seating area for their Zen garden, which is going to be out here where this flag is, I think. It's going to be like a fountain or something fun right here, and you can just sit and relax and kind of get away from everybody. My original idea for this space was actually to wall it all in and have like some barn doors, and you could put your lawnmower and rakes and tools in here and lock it up. But since this is a vacation home, they would rather relax than have to work while they're here, so they decided to do that. Now we're on the outside of the house. Let me tell you a few notable things on the outside. You'll notice that we have these 3-foot overhangs, okay? And that's important because this house faces generally south, and in the summer, these large overhangs will shade these large windows when the sun is more directly overhead, okay? But in the winter, when the sun is at a lower angle in the south, as it is here in the winter, you will get a lot of passive heating through these large windows. And I told Tina, I don't even know if you're gonna have to turn the heat on to keep this place warm because there's so many large windows. So that's one feature. Another thing is we used all kinds of different materials on the outside. We used stone, we used wood siding, we also used composite shakes to break up the height of this structure and give it a really cool and interesting look, even though it's really a pretty small structure. I think we're done. We are done. We're done with the tour. We're done building the house. Thanks for watching. We really had a great time building this and had a great time putting it on YouTube. Stay tuned though, because our plan is to build another house and film it and put it on YouTube. And I hope you enjoy watching that as well. Thank you guys.